And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Monday, August 12th. And we always start out with the sea ice situation, and the ice just continues to melt off along the Arctic coast, the Beaufort Sea coastline. The Chukchi Sea coastline is rather open. The most important thing to keep in mind is that we do have some stronger winds. There's a cold front coming in from eastern Russia. And then ahead of this front are southwesterly brisk winds that will cause some elevated higher surf here, Kivalina on up through Point Hope and up along toward Wainwright. Now into the day, at least perhaps lingering into early Wednesday, this front's going to stall out just across this region and wait for a stronger low that's going to come up out of the North Pacific across the western half of the Aleutians on Wednesday, and then that low will take aim to areas of the west coast later Wednesday night and especially Thursday into the day Friday. And we can see that unfold on this weather map late tonight into early Tuesday morning. We still have weak low pressure lingering over the north central Gulf, kind of the result of the weekend system, and then also a secondary low that just kind of swings through the northern Gulf Coast overnight. And then as we get into Tuesday afternoon, still a weak area of low pressure there of the northeastern Gulf Coast. This is more of a thermal low down across western Canada. But this ridge of high pressure is going to build northward across the mainland later Tuesday into Wednesday. And this is going to provide some very nice weather, help dry out very soggy situation. A lot of rainfall has happened here across the southern half of the mainland since the middle of last week. And so with this ridge of high pressure building, and there'll be a tendency for some areas of fog in the morning, but otherwise sunshine and warmer temperatures are expected starting Tuesday afternoon and especially on Wednesday into Thursday. The next low is going to take shape here, crossing up through the central western portion of the Aleutians up into the lower Bering by Wednesday afternoon. Front stays to the north, kind of washes out. This will become the dominant low, and it'll get down to around maybe just below 980 millibars. But that low is going to track northeastward, and as it does so, it's going to spread gale force winds with gusts to storm force in some areas, along with a broad area of moderate to locally heavy rain around it. And as that pushes into the west coast, especially along the lower Yukon, Norton Sound, up along coastline of the Seward Peninsula, and even up eventually along the northwest Arctic coast, it will create some higher storm surge and potentially some higher surf. So we'll keep an eye on that and stay tuned to later advisories or potentially warnings here for the latter portion of this week. For the inner channels, winds will be southerly 10 to 15 knots, 2 3-foot waves there, Lynn Canal, northwest winds 15 knots, Dixon Entrance. For the outer coast, winds are west-northwest 15 knots, off and south of Sitka, swells right around 6 feet. Offshore flow northeasterly 10 knots, Yakutat Bay, Cape Suckling, 5 to 6 foot swells. And then on Wednesday, look for south winds to 10 knots, Lynn Canal, couple of foot waves. Look for northwest winds 10 to 15 knots, 2 to 3 foot waves, Stevens Passage down through Dixon Entrance. And areas south of Sitka off of Craig, we're looking for northwest winds 15 to 20 knots, westerly winds 15 knots, Sitka up through Gustavus. And then as we go outside of Yakutat Bay, either north or southeasterly winds 10 knots there out toward Cape Suckling with swells around 3 feet. Generally northwest winds within Prince William Sound, Hinchinbrook Entrance on Tuesday at 15 knots. Waves 2 feet within Prince William Sound. Variable winds middle upper Cook Inland at 10 knots with 2-foot waves. And west winds to 25 knots there at the entrance of Cook Inlet with 4 to 5 foot swells. On Wednesday, winds come down further with that ridge of high pressure in place. Easterly winds 10 knots within Prince William Sound and 2-foot waves. Otherwise, variable winds outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance off the Kenai coast and off of Kodiak Island at 10 knots, waves just 2-3 feet. And up along Cook Inlet, look for southwest to south winds 10 to 15 knots, and generally waves running 2 to 3 feet. Winds will be westerly to 20 knots across Kodiak Island on Tuesday, 4 5-foot waves, including Shelikof Strait. Those winds become variable 10 knots, middle and lower portion of the peninsula. Waves 2-3 feet on the North Pacific side, maybe 3-4 feet on the Bering side. And then on Wednesday, southwest winds 15 knots around Kodiak Island. Those winds, though, become southeasterly out of Bristol Bay and down along the Alaska Peninsula. 15 to picking up to 25 knots either side there, Cold Bay and False Pass. Waves generally 2 to 3 feet. And for Tuesday, the eastern Aleutians winds will be out of the southeast, generally speaking 15 knots, picking up to 20 knots, Atka to Adak, and then west of Adak, we're looking at southeast to south winds increasing to 30 knots in advance of that next system. And then on Wednesday, we have the low that will be crossing the central Aleutians vicinity just north there of Adak. Ahead of it, 30 to 35 knot gales, southeast to south winds on the backside, winds generally going to the north as much as 30 knots there, Kiska to Shemya. And this low will be deepening as it works its way northeastward on Wednesday night into Thursday before it comes on shore in the west coast. So Tuesday, west winds Bristol Bay 15 knots, southwest winds into Kuskokwim Bay and out toward the Pribilof Islands at 15 knots, swells 3 to 5 feet. Winds will be stronger St. Matthew on up toward along the Yukon coastline and up into Norton Sound, southwest to south winds to 25 knots. And swells 4 to 6 feet here along the west coast, as much as 8-9 feet at St. Matthew. Winds on Wednesday will be southeasterly, 20 knots St. Matthew, 30 knots St. Paul, St. George. South winds along areas of the southwest coast into Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, and along the lower Yukon Delta at 15 to 20 knots. Swells generally picking up to around 4 feet along the lower Yukon Delta and as much as 5 feet in Norton Sound. And looking at Tuesday, areas west side of the Seward Peninsula and the north side of St. Lawrence Island, south-southwest winds 25 knots, swells up to 8 feet. The lower Chukchi Sea 25 to 30 knots southerly winds with swells of 7 to 8 feet. And then along the Arctic, northwest Arctic coast, 20 to 25 knots there, Point Ley to Utqiagvik. And generally, southwest winds 15 to 20 knots east of Utqiagvik. And for Wednesday, we expect south-southwest winds 15 to 20 knots, especially Prudhoe Bay to Utqiagvik. And then those winds pick up again, southwest winds to 25 knots across the lower Chukchi Sea for Wednesday, with swells there of 5 feet. And then generally south winds 20 to 25 knots there south of the Bering Strait along the west side of the Seward Peninsula and the north side of St. Lawrence Island, with swells right around 6 feet.